from CR News. The 2023 Veterans Day Assembly with Talan and Tyme Sisakvanich.
Thank you for joining us as we commemorate the incredible sacrifice of our nation's service members.
Veterans Day, which is observed every year on the 11th of November, honors all military veterans who have served in the United States Armed Forces for their courage, honor, patriotism, and their sacrifice.
Unlike Memorial Day, Veterans Day honors both retired and active service members. Initially known as Armistice Day, it was originally set as a U.S. legal holiday to honor the end of World War I, which was on November 11th of 1918.
The federal holiday was renamed in 1954 by the 83rd U.S. Congress at the urging of veteran service organizations. At 11:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow, President Biden will issue a proclamation calling on the people of the United States to observe 2 minutes of silence.
And earlier this morning, River students attended our school's annual Veterans Day Assembly, which was organized by orchestra teacher Dave Chartre and his music students. The 30-minute event saw speakers Unique Cullen, Haley Delano, and Spencer Lane touch on their families' experiences, sacrifices, and their great deeds for our country.
Also, they discussed how we as a community have the power to contribute and give back to the people who fight for our safety and freedom. Now, CR News' full coverage of the assembly.
Senior Ren Brunzel sings the national anthem.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
The theme for our assembly today is Service Above Self. Service to our nation, service to our community, and service to our school. Service is measured in many ways at a time when many in our community are hurting out of work, looking through an increasing small pools of jobs, and scraping to get by. Actions that enrich the lives of others carry great meaning. Simple acts of community help lift others up and improve the lives of everyone around you. Our first speaker today, sophomore Haley Delano, will address this topic.
My dad has been a firefighter for 23 years. He started as a volunteer firefighter while he was a senior at Mountain View High School at the age of 17. Since then, he has been on hundreds of calls, experiencing everything from raging house fires to searching for missing fingers and unfortunately watching people die in front of him. My dad has taken on several sacrifices in the past 23 years, exposing himself to dangerous toxins from fires, leaving his family for 24 hours at a time, multiple days a week, and many sleepless nights due to excessive amounts of calls. Although these sacrifices still have an important impact on his community, it is his job as a firefighter EMT to put himself on the line for others. Well, even while my dad is off duty, he is still saving lives. One summer, about 3 years ago, my dad was at home relaxing inside when someone began banging on our front door. My dad opened the door to our panicked neighbor who still lives 2 houses down from us. Our neighbor explained to my dad that his father-in-law, who we'll call Ted, had gone down and went into cardiac arrest. My dad then quickly went to our neighbor's house, and as he expected, our neighbor's father-in-law was lying unconscious on the living room floor. By that point, the family had already called 911, and my dad started doing chest compressions with the hope of keeping his body going. Once paramedics arrived, he instructed them to continue doing CPR until they were ready to keep over. Ted remained unconscious, causing the paramedics to take over with more chest compressions and eventually shocking him. He was then loaded up and transported to the hospital. My dad then had to inform our neighbors that Ted was heading down an unsure and scary path. Afterwards, he walked back home and took the time to decompress now that all the adrenaline was gone. My dad still says 3 years later that it's different when the person means a lot to the people you're close with. There are emotions that don't normally come up when you're on a call helping a stranger. Fast forward a couple of weeks since the incident, Ted is back visiting his family. While he's there, he takes the time to come see my dad and thank him for saving his life, because without my dad's help, Ted may not still be here today. So why am I telling this story? Larger acts of service from our veterans and current military personnel obviously have a great impact on our country, but small acts of service can help and be just as important. Some ways you can complete these small acts of service could be helping an elderly neighbor with challenging chores or donating food to a local food bank, especially now that we are approaching the holiday season. Finally, I appreciate everyone for listening today, and please consider the ways you can help out the people around you. Thank you.
We continue today with a performance by the River Band of Reflections from the Wall by Dave Schaffer. This piece honors the 40th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War and is dedicated to the men and women who served our country during this conflict. In describing music that sounds American, no composer was more important than Aaron Copland. His music is an influence for a generation of classical and film score composers. In addition to a unique harmonic and rhythmic language, Mr. Copland drew heavily from the canon of American folk music in his compositions. The orchestra will play a section from his ballad, Rodeo, entitled Hoedown. In this piece, you will hear the influence from many fiddle and folk tunes. Our next speaker, Senior Spencer Lane, will discuss the selfless acts of family and friends and their choice to serve their community through military service.
Good morning, everyone. Over 41 million Americans have served in the armed forces since 1775. Today, I would like to honor those individuals by talking about Veterans Day and the service they gave to our country. Veterans Day used to be called Armistice Day because on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, World War I officially ended with the signing of the armistice. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a bill rededicating November 11th as Veterans Day in 1958. This holiday is meant to be observed to thank and remember the sacrifices of American veterans who served in all wars and all service branches. Service means that an individual is more than willing to set aside their own time and concerns to help and protect other people. A group of people who make up less than 0.5% of the U.S. population put the safety and well-being of others before themselves are the men and women who served and have served in the United States military. These amazing people made the decision to set aside their time and well-being for our country. My father enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served for 20 years. He continued to serve because he valued the safety of his family and the safety of other people more than himself. He deployed to Iraq in 2006 and was deployed again in 2008. He then deployed a third time to Afghanistan in 2013. He was in countries that were completely foreign to him. He had to miss out on holidays, birthdays, and time with us. He was gone for many months each time. It was hard on my mother since she was the only one taking care of my brother and my sister and I at the time. Being in different areas of the country at the time made it very difficult for any of our family to come down and help us while he was deployed. I specifically remember when he left for Afghanistan. It was a cold day in January on Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and I remembered crying as I watched him board the bus that took him to the air station. I remember all three of us kids were crying that night as our mother tried to comfort us. I still remember the countless phone calls and Skype calls that we had over the course of his deployment. It comforted me knowing that we were able to call him quite frequently and talk to him. I remember the day he came home, and my siblings and I were the happiest kids in the world. My father is not the only person who decided to answer the call to service. My uncle enlisted in the Marine Corps and is a combat veteran. He saw combat in the Second Battle of Fallujah in 2004. My great-uncle enlisted in the United States Army and saw combat in Vietnam. And my great-grandfather also enlisted and experienced combat in Vietnam as well. My mother worked for Wounded Warriors Battalion West, and I was exposed to active duty and retired veterans from all service branches. I participated in physical therapy with these veterans, and participating with them made me learn something. After seeing them and hearing the stories they told me, I learned that these men and women had given up their time, their bodies, and their minds to serve in the United States military and protect the rights of the American citizen. Veterans Day is a day that we honor and respect the veterans who gave up their time, their minds, and their bodies so that you can go to bed at night and wake up in the morning in peace. They gave their today so that you can have your tomorrow. So I ask you to take the time to thank a military veteran for the selfless sacrifice they made for our country. Thank you. Semper Fi.
The Columbia River High School Band will now perform In Defense of Liberty, a medley of patriotic songs from our nation's history. The selection will be directed by Drum Major Ashton Zhang. We offer our thanks today to Kara Conningham and the members of the video production class for taping today's assembly, and to Gabriel Bravo and the rest of the building operations crew for their help in getting us up and running. Thanks also to Alex Odepal and the members of the Columbia River administrative team and their support and guidance in putting this morning together. We invite you to join the River Band Auxiliary this Saturday to celebrate the veterans who have served this country at the Vancouver Veterans Day Parade. The parade is in Fort Vancouver Historic Preserve and begins at 11 a.m. As we conclude this assembly today, we challenge you to look for ways to give back to your community, whether volunteering at the food bank or helping out with the local school group. Even small things make a big difference. This concludes today's assembly. You are excused to your third period class.